Hello everyone, this is lesson 6 and it's about something called the empirical rule. The empirical rule has to do with a normal curve. It always looks like this bell-shaped curve. And the fact is, if you take a bell-shaped curve, a normal distribution, and you divide it up so that every time you move over one of these marks, you're moving one standard deviation from the mean. So this middle is the mean of the data, and one mark over will be one standard deviation, 2 standard deviations away from the mean, 3 standard deviations from the mean. And the same to the left, 1 standard deviation to the left, 2 standard deviations to the left, and 3 standard deviations to the left. It turns out that 68% of the data is always going to be within 1 standard deviation of the mean in both directions. So from here to here, that's going to be 68% of the data. So that's where we get 34% in this zone and 34% in this zone. If we go 2 standard deviations in both directions, now we've just included 95% of the data. It falls between this mark and this mark. If we go all the way out to 3 standard deviations from the mean, within there we've got 99.7% of the data. And that is called the empirical rule. That's what this lesson is about. Alright, so looking at problem number 1, that's going to be pretty straightforward. Given an approximately normal distribution, meaning like a bell curve, what percentage of all values are less than 1 standard deviation from the mean? Well, that's what I just told you. Within 1 standard deviation of the mean, that is 68%. Okay, so that'll simply be 68%. Alright, what percentage of values are less than 2 standard deviations from the mean? Wrong button. Okay, less than 2 standard deviations from the mean, that's your 95%. Okay, and what percentage of values are less than 3 standard deviations from the mean? Well, that is our 99.7%, 3 standard deviations from the mean. Alright, 99.7%. Alright, so far so good. You just have to memorize that. Okay, in fact, just to be clear, to be successful at this whole empirical rule concept, I think your best bet is to memorize all of these numbers. Alright, not just the 68, 95, 99.7, but the percentage of the data that falls within each one of these zones. The 34%, 13.5%, 2.35%, and 0.15%. If you add up all these numbers, guess what you're going to get? 100%. You know, this is supposed to capture 100% of the data. Okay, so memorize all of these little numbers. I mean, remember, it's really only 1, 2, 3. It's really only like 4 numbers because this side is the same. Okay, I guess you call it 7 numbers if you include these 3. Anyway, back to the problems. Number 4, given an approximately normal distribution with a mean of 175 and a standard deviation of 37, draw a normal curve and label 1, 2, and 3 standard deviations on both sides of the mean. Alright, fine. So, let's do that. Alright, I think I'm going to borrow this picture though. Alright, you know what? I'm gonna draw it because you guys are gonna have to draw it. So here's what you do. You need to draw yourself a normal curve. So if I were you, I would start by drawing just a flat line. Okay, so there's our normal curve, and then draw yourself like a bell curve, like this type of a deal. Alright, now you know the middle is going to be the mean, so put a line at the middle, and then if I were you, I would put a mark near the end on both sides of your picture. Now, I would put 2 additional marks as evenly spaced as you can between these 2 marks. So I'm going to put one here and one here, and I'll put one here and here. Okay? And that should do it. So this is going to be the mean right here. Actually, I guess I don't need a variable. The mean is 175. So I'll put 175 right there. Okay. Now, the standard deviation is 37. So that means this number should go up by 37 every time I go to the right. So what's 175 plus 37? Well, that's 212. Okay, so that means that this will be 212, and we'll just keep going up by 37 each time. Notice once I've done the addition once, I can just hit plus 37 and it gives me the next one. Watch, I'll do it again. Plus 37, and it just adds up from there. So 249, 286. Okay. And then, all right, 175 minus 37. So I've got the 138. And now I can just go minus 37. Minus 37. So I've got 101 and 64. Okay, so there's the mean, and this is 1 standard deviation, 2 standard deviations, and 3 standard deviations away. Now, what percentage of the values are within the interval 138 to 212? Well, that interval is the interval that goes from here to here. Okay, and we just learned that what percentage of the data is within 1 standard deviation from the mean. All right, that's our 68%. Okay, that's the empirical rule that we just talked about. Okay, 1 standard deviation, that's 68%, that's what it is. Okay, what percentage of the values are within the interval, and this means from 101 to 249. So if we go to that interval, we're talking about this now. Okay, from here to here. Okay, so what percentage of the data is in, that's 2 standard deviations, so that's going to be 95% of the data. Okay, we just memorized that, hopefully. And what about the interval from 64 to 286? Well, that's just going to take us out that last bit of the way. Okay, so now that's 3 standard deviations, so that's going to take us up to our 99.7%. All right, so that's just the stuff that we memorized. Hopefully you got that. Well, what else could they ask us? Let's see, let me clear out this yellow stuff. All right, so now, what percentage of the values are outside the interval 138 to 212? Okay, so here's 138, here's 212. So outside that interval means like to the left and right of it. So from here, so like this. Okay, so this would be outside the interval. All right, so that's what this problem is talking about. Remember, the entire graph is 100%. So the part that they're leaving out is this white part in here. All right, and we know that this white part is 68%. So all we have to do is do 100% minus 68%, and that should give us the part that's on the outside. All right, so that's going to be 32%. All right, what's next? What percentage of the values are outside the interval 101 to 249? All right, 101 to 249, because I had to erase this now. Okay, so here's a 101, so I got to be outside, and here's a 249, so I got to be outside. So again, same type of deal as before, but now we are outside the interval. This is 2 standard deviations, this white area, and we know that that is 95%. Okay, so this part in here is now 95%. I'm talking about all the white area here is 95%. So this time I'll do 100% minus 95%. Okay. And obviously that is 5%. Okay, so 5% of the data is right there. All right, what percentage of the values are outside the interval 64 to 286? Okay, well, 64 to 286. That's that last, whoa, too much. All right, so here's a 64, here's a 286. So outside the interval is this last little bit right there. All right, now we know that the white area in here is 99.7%. Okay, so we know that this is 99.7% is this whole white area. So if I do 100 minus 99.7, that'll do it. So I could do that because that's what I did before. 100% minus 99.7%. Okay, and that's going to give me, I mean, you can do this in your head, but just in case you have any trouble picturing it, that is 0.3%. Okay, so that is 0.3%, so it's like 0.3%. Now, notice one thing. If we have these numbers memorized, see this little part on the end? That's 0.15%. So all of these problems that I've just done by subtracting from 100, I could have done them by adding as well, if I have those numbers memorized. All right, so if you understand what I'm talking about, I'm saying this little piece right here, we are supposed to memorize that this is 0.15% of the data. And that's the same thing for this point over here, 0.15% of the data. So I could have gotten my 0.3 by adding 0.15 plus 0.15, and that's going to give me the same answer. Okay? All right, let's move on to number 5. I've shown you how to draw it, so I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat this time and copy from this picture. Okay, just to save some time. Alright, so you do your best to draw a normal curve that's as pretty as mine. I cheated. What are you going to do? Given approximately normal distribution with a mean of 121. So our mean here is 121, so that goes in the middle. Standard deviation is 82. Okay, so we're just going to sit here and we're going to add 82 every time. So, you know, 121 plus 82. That gives us our 203, our 285, and 367. So 203, 285, 367. Okay, and then we can take our 121 and subtract 82. Okay, so we'll get 39, negative 43, and negative 125. Okay. Now we're ready to answer some questions. Now before I do anything else, this time I'm going to go ahead and label. In fact, let me just zoom in for a second. I'm going to label the percentages in each one of these parts. All right. We've memorized these numbers. Make that a reality. Memorize all of these numbers. Okay. All right. If you do, then you're going to know that, okay, like right here, we have, I'm going to make this a little smaller. Okay, this part right here is 68%. All these are percentages. So this is 68, this is 13.5, this is 2.35, and this is 0.15. And it's the same thing on the other side, of course. 68, 13.5, 2.35, and 0.15. All right, I'm just going to put all those numbers down right off the bat, and that will help us out. Okay, what interval contains 68%? Oh, you know what? I messed up. 68% is the whole thing right here. My bad. So what I meant was 34 and 34. Okay, so fine. The 68% of the data, that's the middle 68%. Okay, that's one standard deviation in all directions. So that's the zone from here to here. Okay, this is the area that contains 68% of the data. Okay, so 39 to 203. All right, so 39, and let's do it in interval notation with the parentheses. So 39 to 203. In this context, I know it looks like an ordered pair, like x comma y, but in this context, it means the interval from 39 to 203. It's all about the context. What interval contains 95% of the values? 95%, that's the 2 standard deviations in all directions. So that's from here to here. All right, so that's negative 43 to 203. I'm sorry, negative 43 to 285. What percent of the data, no, what interval contains 99.7% of all the values? Well, that's going to be 3 standard deviations in all directions. So that's reaching out to here. Okay, so that's negative 125 to 367. Okay, what percentage of values are above 285? All right, let me get rid of some of this yellow stuff. Okay, above 285. Well, this is the zone that is above 285. Okay, and see the numbers I've written? That's the 2.35 plus 0.15. I could just add those two numbers. If I do add those two numbers, let me tell you what I get. Okay, if I add these, that turns out to be 2.5%. Okay, just 2.35 plus 0.15, that's 2.5%. All right, so that's what that is. 2.5%. What percent of values are below 39? Alright, so there's 39. Okay, so below 39 is going to be from here over, below 39. Let's see, well, how many zones is that? You know what I mean? How many? Well, that's 3 of these little zones. So that's going to be me adding up these 3 numbers right here. Okay, if I add, this plus this plus this, I believe that's going to be 16%. Let's check it out. All right, so it's 0.15 plus 2.35 plus 13.5. Okay, that is 16%. All right, so that's the answer to this one. All right, see how useful it is to have these numbers memorized, these little pink numbers I wrote? Make sure you really do memorize those. Okay, all right, so that's it for number 5. Number 6, so this is the last problem. With the mean, okay, so we need to draw one more of these things, I guess. All right, let me make space. All right, we have a normal distribution with a mean of 159. So here's my 159. Standard deviation is 70. So I'm just going to add 70, 70, 70, and subtract 70, 70, 70. All right, so these are the numbers that I have got. Again, I'm going to put my numbers in here. So this is going to be 34%. This is 13.5%. This is my 2.35%, and this is my, I like to put 0.15, and same on this side. Okay, let's see what we've got. So, my friends, what percentage of the values are within the interval 89 to 229? So 89 to 229. All right, well, that's my good old 1 standard deviation from the mean. So of course that is 68% of the data. Okay, so there's that. What about 19 to 299? Well, 19 to 299, that's 2 standard deviations in both directions. All right, am I right? Yeah, 19 to 299. So that's 2 standard deviations away. So that is going to be 95%. All right, we've memorized that. What interval contains 99.7% of the value? Well, that would be 3 standard deviations in both directions. So that would take us out to here. So the interval is the interval from -51 to 369. So we will write that this way, -51 to 369. What percent of values are above 229? Okay, so above 229, well, let's erase all this stuff. All right, so here's where we go above 229. It's like starting here and going over all the way. All right, so how many zones is that? That's going to be 1, 2, 3 of these zones, everything to the right of 229. So I could just add up these 3 values, and that would give me my answer. Well, we did this on a previous problem, but 13.5 plus 2.35 plus 0.15, remember that turned out to be 16%. So that's going to be the answer to part D, 16%. Now, what percentage of the values are below 19? Okay, below 19, well, here's my 19. Let's erase this old stuff. All right, so anything below 19 is like this. Okay, so that's just these two zones, the 0.15 plus the 2.35. And we've added those before, and that turns out to be 2.5%. And that's it. That is how you use the empirical rule to make predictions about what percentage of the data is going to fall within these values. Now, in real life, if you have some real situation where this was representing, people's heights or how much money they have or anything like that, it might not be exactly 68%. These are estimates. Okay, but it should be pretty close if you have a big enough sample. All right, that's it for this lesson. I hope it was helpful to you, and I will see you on the next video.